Hi, I'm Skinny Cheeks. Today we will be going through the Week 3 PTS patch notes for the Ascending Tide DLC. We got some really juicy new changes here, so let's break them all down. First off, probably the most important change of the patch, fixed an issue where using gap closer abilities against the passenger of a multi-seated mount would place you in the wrong position. So jokes aside, I imagine this was making for some awkward looking animations. Next is with the Sorcerer skill Hurricane, fixed an issue where this ability's visual effects were not updating in tandem with its actual size, fixed an issue where this ability was not properly increasing to its full size. So this skill used to be 15 seconds, but they increased it to 20 seconds with update 33 and changed the timing of the size increases of the AoE, but the visuals weren't lining up with the damage, so now that should be corrected. Next is Templar, Dawn's Wrath, Nova, fixed an issue where this ultimate and its morphs would fail to apply its ground effects if cast more than 20 meters away from yourself. So pretty self-explanatory here, just a bug fix. Alright, now is where we get into some of the bigger stuff. So the skill Carve, this morph no longer increases in damage per stack, but instead increases in duration per stack. Each cast increases the maximum duration by 10 seconds with a maximum duration of 30 seconds when at 3 stacks. And then they also increase the base damage per tick by approximately 66%. This will result in less overall DPS from the ability when at 3 stacks, but with significantly easier management of the effect. So pretty much how this works now is that you get the 12-second duration when you originally cast it, but if you cast it before it runs out, then the duration jumps up to 22 seconds. And then if you recast it again, the duration will jump up to 30 seconds and it tops out there. And like they mentioned, this is going to be a DPS loss for this skill, as the previous version of the skill stacked up the dot to triple damage. So it was pretty insane overall. But now instead you get an incredibly long duration out of it and more time for casting other skills at the cost of losing some of the damage per second from Carve. I think this is a great change. I'm glad they buffed the base dot of it by 66%, since previously we were getting a 200% increase with the 3 stacks. So if they left the damage alone, it would have been a pretty weak dot over that 30 seconds, but now it's a fairly strong dot still, just not to the level that it was before. I think this is going to help overall with the skill not being so strong that you might feel forced into the two-hander playstyle, but at the same time, it will still be a great option to use if you're going with a two-handed weapon. So for the developer's comment on this, previously this ability was allowed to stand alone as an incredibly potent dot to help give two-handed weapons some much needed sustained DPS to help it keep up with other weapons. However, the previous iteration created a situation where the maximum stacks were so strong it was eclipsing many other dots in terms of raw DPS while being incredibly swingy in real content where you needed to back off from your target for a moment. The new iteration will have less volatility in its overall DPS and get it closer to other dots while giving it high uptime to let you focus on other abilities or actions. So sticking with two-handed abilities, we have Stampede. They reduced the initial hit of this ability by 20%, increased the base cost to $45.90 up from $37.80, and increased the duration of the residual area to 15 seconds up from 10 seconds. And then they also increased the damage per tick of the damage over time by approximately 3%. I really like this change too. Again, the damage per second will go down a little with that upfront hit losing 20% of its damage. So Stampede's upfront hit previously had the same tooltip as a normal AoE spammable like Carve does or Whirling Blades in the dual wield line. So now it has been brought down a little to still give it some nice upfront impact, but not on the same level as an AoE spammable. It is still a guaranteed crit though, so it'll still do decent damage from its upfront portion. And the dot from it was buffed slightly, but not enough to make the overall DPS from the skill higher. However, like Carve, we now have an extended duration, 15 seconds as a timer to work from for an AoE backbar dot like this is going to be really nice. And to be clear, the DPS from the skill is still really good. It did go down about 11% or so overall, but it was such a strong dot already that this really doesn't hurt it too bad. Funny enough, this was actually feedback I submitted for this skill in 2019. So I said, what do you think about Stampede's ground dot lasting longer like Endless Hail and Blockade? I think it would make the backbar two-hand even more viable since you could keep up your Berserker enchant for 15-second duration. I don't see how it would be OP or mess anything up for PvP either. So this feedback was long before the big buffs that Stampede and Carve got to be the skills that they are today, but I'm really glad that this is the direction that they ended up deciding to go with. So last thing on on this, let's read the developer's comment. Similar to Carve, this ability's potency was juiced up to inject some power for the skill line's PvE performance, but ultimately created a situation where the other morph felt eclipsed entirely, even in PvP. Stampede now focuses its damage less on an upfront burst and instead on more sustained damage for targets sitting in the area. Overall, this will reduce the DPS of the skill as well, while letting it have a slightly longer duration to the effect so you can focus on other actions instead. Alright, the next big change is with Vampire, Blood Frenzy. This ability and its morphs now grant a stack of up to 30 weapon and spell damage rather than 600 up front, up to a maximum of 10 stacks. Decrease the tick frequency to 2 seconds, down from 1, haha, inverse math, so the ability drains health slower. The health cost now increases by 250 health per tick rather than 20% of the cost of the skill with no cap. And then reduce the initial cost to 700 down from 1980. For the Simmering Frenzy morph, this morph now increases the weapon and spell damage granted to a maximum of 40 per stack rather than adding 66 weapon and spell damage each second. The ability is toggled with no cap. And then for the Sated Frenzy morph, this morph now also reduces the ramping cost of the ability to 200 per stack down from 250. So essentially the health cost now caps out at 3,200 per tick before any cost reduction you might have. And the ticks are now only every 2 seconds instead of every 1 second. So this should be pretty easy to heal through on just about any setup. You still don't get any outside healing while it's active, that isn't changing, but the health cost is way more manageable. But with that decreased risk also comes the decreased reward. For the Simmering Frenzy morph, you are now capped at 400 extra weapon and spell damage, which will be stacked up fully at 20 seconds. This is a fair amount of weapon and spell damage, but nothing even close to what was capable of being reached before. I think it could be a useful option maybe for solo stuff still, but I don't know how much it'll be worth the hassle for organized group play. At the end of the day, you could just slot another damage over time ability in that slot and not worry about it. The Sated Fury morph definitely feels lacking, just less of a health cost, but that wasn't much to deal with anyways with the new way that it works. So I'm still not sure how I feel about this change yet. I'm still thinking about it. I know the previous iteration was pretty broken with the high-end damage it could pull off, but I'm not sure if I love where it landed either. I think it is definitely in a spot where I don't feel like I need to be a vampire and use it, but maybe still a nice option for those that want to go vampire. And I guess that is overall what they are intending. This is a tough skill to balance because if you make it too strong without enough downside, you'll feel forced into using it, but as it is right now, it seems decent if you are already planning to be a vampire, but not something you need to run by any means. So let's read the developer comment. This ability and its morphs are currently enabling incredibly polarizing gameplay. It feeds into the intense risk-reward mechanic that can often be mitigated heavily by specialized classes and builds that stack lifesteal paired with deep knowledge of content and combat interactions. In its current form, it feels too penalizing for the base vampire experience to engage with in a satisfying way, while also enabling an overwhelming amount of power for those who know how to use it properly. This iteration now significantly reduces both the penalty and the bonus of the effect to make it more accessible and balanced overall, helping it feel more like a damage over time alternative where an ability can be active for prolonged periods of time with slightly more risk reward than usual. And I think that just means not compared to the old version, but slightly more risk reward than using just a standard damage over time ability. But let's go ahead and move on to the item sets. And just a quick reminder, if you haven't already subbed to the channel, it is free. It helps me out a ton and you can always change your mind later. All right, back to the patch notes. So Griffin's Reprisal fixed an issue where the synergy from this set was not working with the Harmony trait. So this one is maybe interesting solo to allow access to a self synergy or for a PvP setup to run with Harmony, but I don't really see this making its way into organized PvE group play. And then Sergeant's Mail, this set now adds 30-31 weapon and spell damage to your fully charged heavy attacks rather than increasing their damage by 2257. So pretty much like they did with all of the other heavy attack sets in the previous weeks on the PTS, they have toned back some of the crazy burst potential that you could get from stacking these up. And then finally, another big set change. Bahsei's Mania reduced the maximum damage bonus granted from this set to 12% down from 15%. And then for the developer comment, this set is currently pulling out too far ahead compared to other sets, creating a situation where every build feels like it should be running dangerously low on resources all the time, or utilizing powerful contextual group sets to drop low and fill up when needed. While we do want the set to reward its risks, we're reining the power back a bit to let other sets shine where they do best. And I really like this change too. Yes, it is a nerf, but Bahsei is going to be a really strong set still. Here is a comparison of the damage boost from the old 15% version to the new 12% increase. And keep in mind, Bahsei does have that nice 5% damage done increase on the 3-piece bonus as well to add on top of these numbers. It is still a really great set, especially if you are getting a little more sweaty and really maintaining those low levels of magicka, but now it takes a little bit longer before it passes up some of those other options. And for a lot of people, I think this will help with set diversity a fair bit. I see myself using Bahsei probably still as my main go-to set, but the difference in that and other options has definitely shrunk a little, and I think that's a good thing. Lots of testing to do overall. We'll see how all of this ends up playing out. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about the week 3 changes. A big thanks to my current Patreon supporters. If you want to see how you can help support to keep these guides coming, there will be a link to my Patreon in the description with options for as little as $3. And the YouTube membership button is now live as well with the same benefits set up as the Patreon if you are more comfortable with that sort of thing. And a special thanks to Nicholas, Simon, Cougar is Bay and the Cougar City Guild, the Order of War Guild, Iffy, Cantankerous Cat, Shady, BlakeWin816, and my wonderful wife. I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.